Signs of the Southland. Let's start at the top. Well, with a preview of what's to come when we talk about baseball. Jake DeLeo, Collegiate Baseball National Player of the Week. Mr. Purdy, give me that glorious stat line, if you
This
will.
man had a lovely stat line and a couple bombs that were just no doubters the whole way. I don't know if they hit the football facility building or not. I was watching on TV, but I they looked long enough to where if they were on track, they did.
They definitely did. It went off the Brock.
Oh, very nice. Okay,
They did
that's
do a
good.
couple Brock shot tweets.
I was gonna say I didn't actually know if that was called a Brock shot, but in my head naturally it was like they have to call these Brock shots, right? Like there's yeah. Anyways, yeah, he hit a 1250 slugging with 5 hits, 3 homers, 6 RBIs, 6 runs himself, and a 500 OBP. He between his 6 runs and 6 RBIs, he was 12 of the 36 runs over the weekend. So high output weekend for just the offense in general, but Jake was on a tear, which definitely contributed in a big way to the sweep of this weekend.
Yes, I was. You're welcome. Just kidding. That's not me.
Boo.
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 I'm getting booed off the podcast. What a great start.
We're gonna cut
Not the
swimming.
first time.
We're gonna cut swimming just for that.
You
Yes,
and
the
Michigan
Clemson
State both,
protocol.
man. Gary Barta has entered the chat.
Oh dear.
Yikes. The Supreme Court has actually entered the chat because that did get referred that
That's
far
right,
up the
yeah.
chain. We need to stop talking about legal matters. Let's walk on over to McCamish Pavilion and talk about men's basketball. First up, they won 77-70 versus Virginia Tech and followed that up with an exhibition win over Florida Tech, 79-56. Mr. Grant, you have the con for the Virginia Tech game. What say you?
I think if anything, the free throw percentage should be considered a con. Honestly, both teams were awful from the line, but remarkably, Georgia Tech got 26 attempts to Virginia Tech's 8. That is that is the first time I think in the history of doing this podcast I have seen Georgia Tech get a line
That's a lot of free throws.
that generous. They only made 14 of the 26. Virginia Tech made 4 of their 8. So, I guess that's a 10-point margin right there. But Virginia Tech's a bubble team. Virginia Tech's probably a better team. Only 5-10 in the ACC, which, if you have a losing record in conference play, maybe conference championships are not for you, or not conference championships. NCAA championships are not for you. But anyways, 15-11 Virginia Tech is still a quality team. We may have knocked them firmly off the bubble, almost as we might have done to Wake Forest had that come through in Tech's favor there. Looking at the score sheet, I'd say it was a pretty balanced attack. You had 5 players in double figures. Javon Franklin with the double-double. He was 10 points, 10 rebounds, 4 of those being offensive rebounds for some second chance points there. He also had 5 blocks and 1 block assist. So great to see there. I think he's probably, at least from my radio listen to the game, definitely somebody that deserves a mention there. Debo had 21 points, though. It's his career high. That goes is certainly something that needs to be mentioned. He was 6 of 10, 3 for 4 from 3, 6 of 8 from the line. So really good job there. Drew 5 fouls as well. Again, pretty good night for him. I believe that's his career high. Previous was set against Lamar way back in fall of 2021. So kind of that Debo game, I guess we've all been waiting for. Miles Kelly, 15, Lance Terry, 14, Kyle Sturdivant with 10, Jalen Moore with 7 rounds out your scores for Georgia Tech.
Not much to say on the Florida Tech game, other than the fact that this was far too close for far too long until Florida State.
You're rushing me along there, man. You're rushing me along. Let me talk about the men's team. They're both good wins. Florida Tech was too close for too long, but I want to make sure we get 1 point in edgewise. I know there's a lot of scoreboard to talk to, so I'm not going to belabor the point. This team is improving. Finally is an operative word there, but credit where credit is due. I think this is as good as we've seen them play all year, and it's their best win definitely since Miami. Not that there's been all too many of them, but what say you guys? I think they're kind of going in the right direction, at least as we look to wind down the season.
That's good, but I mean, the seedings are already screwed for ACC tournaments, so it's not like we're able to see much of it. If they win a game they shouldn't win in that, I'd be like, okay, that's something to me because we're just this far down the road where it's like any progress is. I mean, okay, well, the progress is good because I'm about to make a lot of the same points with the women's basketball team. Um, but yeah, I feel good. I'm glad Depot got that game. I felt bad for him, just like clearly being a guy that has the chance to do that and just time in and time out just couldn't pull it off, and then just clearly was as bummed as anybody post game press conferences about how the team was playing. So, I mean, granted, there wasn't many directions other than up to go after the Duke game, so it's good to see they at least are getting on the right side of a win column.
I mean, they can end the regular season if not that all these games are super winnable. Obviously, Pitt's a challenge coming up here midweek, but Louisville, Syracuse, and Boston College are 3 games that Tech has some or at least a decent shot in. If all those break the right way, that's ending the regular season 15-16 with a shot to get a win or two playing really early in the ACC tournament. I think that's good. I mean, it's not the best result in the world, but team's kind of young. They're trending in the right direction at the very least. I think
the front half of the schedule is also just really hard in conference plays too. So I mean, they kind of got. I don't know how many of these. I don't think you could call these schedule losses because it's not like the NBA where you're playing 3 and 4. But they definitely didn't exactly have an off game opportunity for a long time at that middle stretch.
Or just one to figure things out against quality play in the ACC.
Why didn't we schedule Florida Tech like 3 weeks ago?
It's all about how the ACC schedule comes out. That's something that Pastor plugs in.
That was a joke.
Afterwards. Oh, okay. Anyways, I think finishing the regular season 15-16, 14-17 would not be. I mean, obviously, it's not ideal. You want to go to the tournament and all that, but this is. I don't know. I don't think that we've kind of rushed past the point of our expectations for women's basketball being return to the tournament to will they ever get an ACC win to this is okay, they're failing fast. And I don't think that we're being consistent in how we apply that to men's basketball. So I do want to at least get my thoughts out there that it's like they're improving. And, Wednesday was fun. I mean, Saturday, a little too close, a little too long. But I mean, I think it's worth at least ruminating on a little bit.
Fair point, Mr. Purdy. Let's flip over to the women's basketball side. They beat Wake Forest 63-55 and then lost to Florida State despite keeping it close at half, 80-66.
Yes. In fact, having a lead, it's part of it for I think in the second half of that game for a little bit too. So it was I thought the Florida State loss I actually saw was a big point of progress. I put up 1,000 words about the whole weekend on the site. Just about like, okay, here's where we are, here's what's good. And to summarize that, in a way, the win against Wake Forest was really fun to see. Arguably should have won that game earlier this year on the road. Got beat out in the last second thing there. So that was frustrating at the time when the Tech just needed. And also that would have been their only road win at this point as well. They're one of the 2 or 3 ACC teams without a road win. But it was just that they just needed to figure it. The big thing was they had some major defensive flaws after the Clemson game and the one after it, which was Pitt, I want to say. Or whoever was after Clemson, I'm forgetting. But they really needed to just get better defensively, and the effort was clearly there. They were doing so much. They were far more physical than they were in the 2 games before, and we're not losing track of switches, all the various things you need. And then Kara Dunn beat her own career high the next game and got to 21 points, which is really good. So she's shown she can lead an offense in terms of being the scorer, which is really nice to see. Florida State, they have this girl named Tania Latson who is, I thought the Notre Dame girl whose name I'm blanking on, which Olivia Miles. I thought she was going to be the ACC Player of the Year. Tania Latson is something else. Have you all seen either of those games against Florida State and seen her? It's insane. She's unbeatable. She is unbeatable. She scored 31 against us. That was her 7th 30-point game of the year.
I think that's the most in ACC history for freshmen. Something like that. It's the stat that I.
She's playing like a 5th-year senior, and she just got to Florida State. Like, this girl is incredible. They average 82 points a game. We held them to 80, which feels like a big win to me. That we gave up 99 last time. Like this is a 19-point cut is not nothing. So we stayed winless in ACC road play, and we're kind of stuck in a bad seeding for the tournament now at this point. But they're good. I mean, they're getting better. Like they're doing the thing where the Hawks were bad in Trae Young's rookie year, but like they were supposed to be really bad because that's just how it works. This is how I feel about this with our freshman year as well, with all the freshmen on the team. Like it's not going to be amazing. You're not going to have Tania Lotson. She's a major outlier in this, but they're doing the right things to keep getting better and better, and the payoff has been showing. I think they can win their first round game in the ACC tournament regardless of who they play. But once they get to play, you play anywhere from a 5, 6, or 7 seed, I think, in the second round. So that'll be tough.
I think, and Jake touched on this a little bit when we were talking about the men, like they're in the same spot. And I think, yes, we have given the women a little bit more benefit of the doubt because of their relative youth. But
I don't think that's a consistent position though, with all the transfer talent we brought in. Like I don't think it's really fair to treat them with two different measuring sticks. My expectation for the women was to go back to the tournament, and they're not going to do that. Like, I don't know. I want to be positive about both teams. So
no. I agree. The point that I'm coming around to is I think you can see there is a literal relative youth on that team, and especially we saw that in the middle chunk of the season where Swartz and Jackson just were not getting playing time.
They were unplayable.
And it wasn't even
Jackson became unplayable at points, and Cam can play herself into unplayable if she's too streaky. I think honestly at this point, I believe I overhyped the two of them myself, which
in
a big way.
So
I mean, but Cam was an ACC first team player of the year, or first team.
Yeah, and she's
player.
gotten better in that sense. I asked Nell about that. I'm like, she gets really streaky like this, and she wears tape on her shoulder. I'm like, does she have an injury we don't know about? She's like, no, it's just how she's playing. And she wants the ball in her hands a lot, and this team does a little bit better when they share the ball a little bit more also. But these last 2 games though, she's done a lot better of like draining more threes more regularly. So I mean that's just kind of part of the deal. You're going to get a high volume miss, high volume make.
Yeah, the point that I'm coming around to is that there is less overall youth on the men's basketball team, and I think that in that case, your program has been trending in a different direction than the women's team has over the last 3-year span. So yes, it is an inconsistent. No, I'm giving you the credit. Like it is an inconsistent position, but I think one team has earned some benefit of the doubt based on past experience, and one team has not. That is the way that it works out in my head.
And at least from what I can tell with how the two coaches have felt immediately in those games after talking to both of them right after games, Josh definitely has been far more disappointed in his team than Nell has. Nell knows, like, just has clearly known like what they need to do to get better. Josh Pastner said, "I've tried everything."
Yeah, there's like one coach that is at the end of his rope, so to speak, in terms of what he can do to make this team better, and the other coach realizes that we're taking our lumps this year. We will be much better next year.
Be better next year, and they'll get better now too. Like they did not leave the course. Like I don't. The confidence was definitely shot in some games, but they never exactly they never folded like we saw the men's team fold.
Yeah, it's just
I want to put something out there real quick.
Okay.
You guys are, men's team is, they're older, they're taking their lumps. I want you to take a guess what the average age or average experience level, of college basketball years. Both of these teams are older than you're giving them credit for.
What,
Jack, you want to take a guess?
Yeah, I'm gonna guess like 2.9, 3.5.
Which one's your 3.5?
Oh, it's actually gonna be the women just because of Hermosa and Arenat, Cam, Bianca, and AC Carter, if not 4.
Both of you are, I don't want to say off the mark, but it's 2.67 and 2.63. Okay. The women have on average 2.67 years of experience, and the men have 2.63. I think they're teams that are kind of in the same spot. And if anything, with the women having only 12 players, you have a couple, Bianca, Cam Schwartz, Aisha won't honor. I apologize. I'm so
It's a hard one.
But Nerea Hermosa, like those between them, like outside of them, yes, very young team, but those are girls that are getting a lot of the minutes. I just don't think it's.
Yeah, my thought there is there has been a very intentional transfer of minutes power
Yep.
down the age group on that team, and it was clear that that was the best way to move forward.
And the men just had to do that starting earlier, I think, and that's why they're kind of now in the same place, right? Like I feel like they're kind of both sitting in a pretty similar spot, right? At least as far as this year's concerned.
Yeah,
Yeah.
record wise, you probably couldn't tell that much of a difference unless you watched both teams regularly and saw what was going on. Also, just the fact that there's just more attention to the men's team. I think that's an angle of bias as well. That like you need to have more of a win now thing. That's going to play into it, and I think that's definitely played into it for me. It's like, oh, there's more attention here for the men. Like, oh my god, they lost.
And there's also the fact that not just the media attention, but the ACC is now did not used to be as deep on the women's side as it was on the men's side, and this year it is that deep.
Yeah, the women's team. They take this women's team a few years ago, and they're going to win. They're probably going to win more games.
I'm not trying to be the antagonist here, but I don't think that's true either. I think the men's ACC's come down, and I think the women's. I mean, if anything, it's down a little bit too.
Wouldn't that make the men's team a little bit worse though? If the ACC has come down for the men, and then they've gotten worse with it, even more worse.
I don't know, man.
I like
both of these teams. Both of these teams befuddle me, and I think that we've kind of spent the last 2 months just kind of be like, "Yep, they're doing what they're doing," and I don't know. I think they're both at interesting kind of crossroads, right? Like the women went to the tournament last year, but they kind of were, it's kind of troublesome down the stretch, and I think they're both kind of, I don't know, they're both kind of getting to that same spot where. I don't want to be like, what's going to happen next year? There's still 4 or 5 games left for both teams. And it's just like,
well, both me
next year's already the theme, right?
Both me and Asa did basically state of the program. His was literally named state of the program, but like where we are now, articles that go far more deep in all this. People want to read those and get more numbers and stuff around all this.
Let's move on. One quick update from the men's tennis team. A couple of them appeared at the ATP Challenger event in Rome this past weekend. The number 10 seed Andres Martin defeated Colin Marcus 5-0, and Marcus ended up retiring. And then Gabriele Brancatelli defeated the number 9 seed Murphy Cassone 3-6, 6-4, 6-4. Interestingly, I don't think we've heard the name Brancatelli a lot, even in the 6-man rotation that we've seen so far early this season. So that is something to keep an eye on for the future. But in terms of actual results, women's tennis had a 2-set of matches this week, a 7-0 sweep of Gonzaga, and then a 4-1 loss to Athens. Mr. Grant, I believe you have some updates on the Gonzaga match first.
Yeah, I mean, I was nothing more than a scoreboard interloper for these two, but Gonzaga was a nice win. In terms of the action, it was a sweep. Sometimes I wonder just how we get teams to come all the way across the country to play. When they're from Spokane, but the women are good and kind of command that level of. Schedule pull. But you got Gonzaga, like we said, 7-0 sweep. I don't believe any of their doubles nor their singles were ranked. Jack, you can correct me if I'm off base there.
I think so.
But they got things done against Gonzaga. That's kind of what we expected, though. So,
and then the weekend turned its page to number 3 Athens. They ended up picking up 1 doubles point. They dropped the other 2. And then they got a win on court 1, they got a win on court 4, they got a win on court 6, and then kind of just, it was kind of rough the rest of the way.
Well, I mean, the court 1 and 6 games weren't finished yet. So, I mean, those weren't wins. Like they were winning.
Oh, I see.
4-3.
Look, reading is hard when you have to read all the way over to the end of the line to see DNF.
Wow. Here, I'll read it for you since I in there. Yeah, the Georgia got the Carroll D and Sherborough's line did not win. Bilchev and Cruz's line 2 was winning but did not finish because the third line of Garcia Gross and Data. How do you say that?
Dejaj.
Gotcha. They lost 6-3, and so by the time Bilchev and Cruz are up 5-2, but either way that wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah. So
they did win.
So your singles, Lee DNF versus Ma, but was up in the third set.
A good match,
Villanova,
7-11, and they were one set apiece. Like that was going to be fun.
That was tight. Like looking down the line here, even the second court, Vidmanova versus Bilchev, that was a 6-1, 6-3. I mean, not particularly close, but that's within 7 rankings. Number 39, Riasco versus Cruz, 6-2, 6-4. Jane defeated Kowalski, 6-4, 6-4. Grant over Garcia Gross. That went to a tiebreak in the third set, or in the second set, excuse me. Tiebreak was in the first set. That match ended up clinching the match for Athens, and then Marsh lost to Niradorn 6-7, 2-5, and that did not finish. So rough day on the courts in that one, but it's the number 3 team in the nation. Not a terrible showing on some of these, and also a really tough opponent, even in the singles play. So, and
Carol Lee was tracking she was at least up 2-1 in the third set when they can't call that. I don't know if that was on serve or not though, so don't know if she was like clearly going on a route to win that, but at the very least was leading when they called that match. So it could have been like a 5-2 situation here.
Yeah. Anything else to add, Mr. Grant?
No, I think you guys covered it.
Let's talk about softball, but right after this short break.
Yes, as always, this podcast is brought to you by Section 103. And today, I just want to warn you guys, Section 103 is not shipping this week. It's very sad, but that is because they are taking a well-earned week off. So while you're thinking about it, go put in your order, make sure it's there when he comes back, and they're all back in the store, but shipping will resume February 25th. As always, you can get a lot of cool Georgia Tech stuff, some of the best out there, if not the very best, which I would, in my opinionated capacity, definitely say so. And as always, free shipping on orders over $70. Be sure to order now so you can get it as soon as they're back, because, can't get enough of that wonderful Georgia Tech apparel.
Welcome back to Science of the Southland. Mr. Grant, we spent a lot of time at Shirley Mewborn Clements Field this weekend. You especially probably clocked in a full 24-hour day of softball plus 2 full sunburn layers of skin, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I can feel it in my face. It's very toasty. Well,
we'll start earlier in the week though. Softball went to Georgia State and notched a 5-inning run rule win, 10-1 on Tuesday. They really blew it absolutely open. At the end, it was pretty close early on. Mallory Black lodged a grand slam in Panthersville, so that's always nice to see. And then at the weekend, we had the ACC Big Ten Challenge. I think it's the first annual ACC Big Ten Softball Challenge. I'm not entirely sure.
What? That was the first. What rock have you been living under? We've been doing this podcast for like 5 years.
Have they not done it?
No. It's back from the dead, or the COVID related deceasedness. I think it happened last year. But it definitely was a thing for a while. I know we've had Boston College down a couple of times, but I personally was glad to get Louisville just out of luck of the draw. So it was a long weekend. I'm very sunburnt. I watched, I mean this with all love, far too much softball.
Far too much Wisconsin softball from your notes here.
If I see another game with them in it this year, it will have been too soon. I mean, I feel like between the Louisville and the Georgia Tech regional, I've watched probably on aggregate more Wisconsin softball than either of the other two teams.
There was an ACC Big Ten Challenge in 2019. We played Nebraska and Iowa.
Yeah. Yeah.
I completely memory hold that. That is wild.
And they've done it before then as well. But
I
yes,
feel stupid.
lots of action. Wisconsin, Illinois in town, as like I said, as well as Louisville. We caught Wisconsin in the first two games, Illinois in the second two, with the associated family-related commitments around Louisville softball. I was only able to watch the Wisconsin Friday night game. I think it was 4 or 5 innings that I caught there, and then just warm-ups for the other two. Having to come in and out, drive people to and from the airport, things like that. But at least in that game, I will say that it is kind of interesting that it was the two Wisconsin games that Georgia Tech was able to notch wins in. This is a good team, as we know, because they ended our season last year, but they're also 2-7. So kind of interesting that both of those wins came against Tech. And I would say the two of the three most, I guess, one-sided. None of these games were all that one-sided. All these teams look really pretty much in the same lane. I think that there's no nitty gritty yet, so I haven't run my numbers, but I think Massey all had them between like 40 and 70 or something like that. But yeah, two of the most one-sided games of the 8 that were played were Tech versus Wisconsin. So kind of interesting there. In terms of themes overall, Illinois is a pretty solid hitting team that runs the bases pretty, I would say, aggressively. Wisconsin had a little more pop to the bat. It just in terms of my watching, I think in terms of vibes, it's pretty good. Not quite as full as I expected, given that I think Akshay, in your experience and mine, it was marked as sold out.
Yeah, Saturday passes were sold out, and I had to pay $2 to get in the stadium for quote unquote standing room only tickets, of which there were many actual seats. So
I was going to say, I think you walked up and sat right down next to us where we were at. So, that's unsurprising, but also kind of odd there. Like I said, if I didn't overall, Georgia Tech went 1-3. Like I said, again, a lot of these games were coin flips. I think Louisville won 1-2 in the 7th and lost one in not overtime, in extras. In terms of overall performance, yes, over innings.
That's just cricket, baby.
Yeah, exactly. Tech lost their second game to Illinois by a run. A lot of close softball. I think it probably behooves us to start with talking about the Wisconsin games, just because those came first. In terms of your pitchers of record, you had Blake Nelman getting the start in the first Wisconsin game, and you had Kinsey Norton getting, I believe, the start in the second. In the first game, Blake Nelman, 3 hits, 3 runs, 3 earned, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts in 4.1. She kind of spread those out, but ran into trouble in the 5th. Kinsey Norton came in relief, kind of cleaned up the mess. Chandler Dennis did get the loss in that game. It was tied 3-3 going into the 7th before Wisconsin tacked on 3 runs. Sophia Voiles came in and essentially got the 7th in the scorecard because Chandler Dennis allowed 2 hits, 3 runs, 3 earned, and a walk before Voiles came in for a scoreless inning after that. So Akshay, presumably that was a home run. I don't know if you can confirm nor deny that.
I don't remember, but it was just a very, I will say, just as a theme, this was a very rough weekend on the mound for the most part for Tech. And I don't think that, I think that's the best way that I can put it. I don't think we can say anything overarching quite yet, and I'll let you get back to your recap. But we saw a lot of pitchers that we trusted last year. Well, I guess the 2 pitchers that we trusted last year look not as nails as we previously expected. But again, it's the second weekend of the season. I don't think we can't say anything definitive at this stage.
Yeah. I will note, just based on how the box score comes across, I don't see any other way for that to be anything but a home run. So I'm going to amend my previous statement. 1 swing, 1 3-run home run. I'm still going to call that 6-3 game, a close one. Where it was less close was the 6-1 game. That was the second one. Wisconsin was actually the home team in this one because each team got a home and an away against each opponent. Anyways, in that game, I think it's also worth noting that kind of on that same thing, that pitching was a bit of an issue between Norton and Nelman. They each allowed 3 runs. Nelman, only 2 of hers were earned. Again, Voiles cleaning things up late in the 7th, or I guess in the 6th. Again, that's Wisconsin scoring late. A lot of these games had some late runs, and not to harp on the pitching, but it was better in the second 2 games. But even then, scoring or allowing 4 runs in that last Illinois game is not a ton. So I think it's just a team that's figuring out things in the new year, right? It's something that we're probably going to be saying about baseball too, is settling into those rhythms of a new season. Again, it's just something they're going to have to figure it out. Like, that's just how it is. Dennis was better in the first Illinois game. She pitched 6 innings and allowed 2 runs. None were earned though. So that is worth noting. Kinsey Norton, who's certainly settled into that solid third role there, had a scoreless inning of relief in the win against Illinois. And then in the loss to Illinois, you had Blake Nelliman kind of getting into some trouble early, allowing a run, didn't record an out before Kinsey Norton pitched 4, allowed 2, and Chandler Dennis pitched 2 and allowed 1. So again, no particular big crooked numbers. I think the biggest inning by any particular team against Tech was 3 runs, but you just have to scratch a couple more across if you're going to do that.
The only other thing that I'll note is Paige Vukadinovich had a pretty good weekend, if I remember correctly. I have seen that Tech has been pretty aggressive on the base paths, especially earlier on in the lineup. And I think you noted that as something.
That was the whole broadcast. He's like, they're gonna steal a lot more. Also, Vukadinovich got top of the line. Like, she's hitting first. She's in the
first spot of the lineup. Yeah. So that kind of writes
triple
itself.
Triple against Illinois was good. We'll also note home runs have been spread out pretty well. I know that just off the top of my head, I know Allen's at 3 on the year. Mallory
Black's had a couple,
or was that a big double?
I think she's had 1. There was a back-to-back somewhere in there as well.
And then Emma Koff, I think, is at 2. So certainly some power spread up and down the lineup, which is good to see. I think we just need to chain some more hits together. Like, if you look at the box score, Tech had 4 hits to Wisconsin's 8 in the first game, 6 versus 6 in the 6-1 game. Like, that's them getting on base and getting some runners on the base pads, just not lining them up quite as well. 8 hits against Illinois, and then 5 in the 4-3 loss. So really, they're in games and they're getting some runners. It's just timely hitting, right?
Yeah, that has definitely been a bit of a struggle. We'll just have to keep an eye on it. Like I said, I think it's far too early in the season to say anything definitive about some of these trends. I think that there's like some stat for baseball in which it takes like 40 or 50 ABs for stats to actually start being predictive of future performance. And like a similar number of innings pitched. So I think at that point, once we get maybe through the end of February, maybe like a week into March, after that first season or first series of ACC play, that's when we can start saying definitive things, I think.
Yeah. We'll have a good look after this next stretch of games in where is it, Boston or wherever we're playing, or no, Charlotte, but yeah,
Charlotte. I do want to call out one more great performance to start the season so far. I know we just said stats aren't predictive, but Grace Connolly is. I thought I saw her at 360 something.
She was hitting 360 something before Sunday.
Oh, okay. Well, anyways, still good. And I knew that I saw that number jumping off the page for a particular reason. Madison Dobbins was also 421, but again, statistical size on those, your mileage may vary. So,
last note on softball before we get into their schedule. Well, I guess this is part of their schedule, but for next year, they have been invited to the Clearwater Invitational. That is really, really big. It's the
A lot of
first
great
time that
teams
they've been
going there.
invited to this specific invitational, but they have played in Clearwater invitationals of another stripe, other names
There's
before. Go for it.
there's two of them. So Louisville actually opened in the other Clearwater Invitational last weekend. I think that one was the one that started in Columbus and then moved to Clearwater, Columbus, Georgia. So good for them that can
Oh
get in
my
the.
God. Why are there two that are they named the same thing?
I I think one's Tax Act and the other's like I don't know if the direct sponsors the NFCA, but
I
the
think
Coaches
this one is the
Association is
Tax Act
definitely
one.
yeah.
Yeah, this
Tax
is
Act
Tax
one
Act.
is the big one.
Tax
Tax
Okay,
Act
Act
is
is
the
the
one
big
that we
one.
got invited to.
Yep.
The
Yay!
full
I love
field.
it.
The full field, well, I have it in front of me. Florida State, Athens, Tech, Kentucky, LSU, Minnesota, UNC, Northwestern, Ohio State, Stanford, Tennessee, Texas, UCF, UCLA, Washington, Wisconsin. The very funny part of the Georgia Tech release, and this is the last note I have on this, is that they forgot that conference realignment is a thing. So they said that the Big 12 will send two teams and the AAC will send one, which, if you know anything about conference realignment in 24, that is absolutely not the case. Um,
Nope.
just to read out their schedule, Tech softball schedule for this coming week instead of 2024. They'll play Kennesaw State in the midweek. They'll be in
Mm-hmm.
Charlotte this weekend to play Boston University on Friday, Penn State and Kent State on Saturday, and then a Kent State and Charlotte doubleheader on Sunday. So more competition upcoming, more data points, more invitational style non-con. I'm interested. I want to see. I want to see them do well against some of these teams. I have no idea how good any of these teams are. Mr. Grant, can you give me a brief summary?
Yeah, let me pull up. So I know that I love my own ratings, but the NCAA has still not released a nitty gritty. Yeah, it's only been 2 weeks, so I'm not actually chafed about that. But in terms of what we're looking at for the others, I need to find my tab because there are so many. Georgia Tech will catch four different teams. They'll start Friday with Boston University. They're slotting in right at sixth in the Massey composite, using Massey because, like I said, no nitty gritty there. Boston University will be Friday night. We'll catch Penn State as well. Penn State's at 44, another quality mid to upper top 100 type team. We've got Kent State. He just has them as Kent. They're at 161. We played them twice. And then we finish things off with Charlotte. Charlotte's pretty good. They were kind of in the mix in their conference last year and I know we're obviously mid realignment, so those will be changing too, coming up to the AAC next year. So 2024. But Charlotte's right in there in the top 60. I think they're at 51 in Massey right now as well. Like we said, would love to know what the RPIs are there because that kind of is the classic NCAA standard. But all those teams are pretty good. You probably need to get 2 wins against Kent, but just a nice mix of quality in there and should make for, it's another one of those weekends where the top line names aren't that like, ooh, it's not like, oh, we're playing Alabama softball or, oh, we're playing Florida State or Oklahoma or whatever. But all these programs are between pedestrian and, tournament caliber type teams.
Speaking of tough competition, let's talk about the ACC Swim and Dive Championships that were this weekend. This is, I'm sure, Jake and Jack's favorite segment. Let's start at the top. Let's start with our name brands. Denise Ertan won the 1,000 free and the mile free, the 1650 free, both school records, and the ACC's third ever female, or Tech's third ever female ACC champ. Ray Kuramoto hit a school record in the 200 IM. Mark Kilavuz placed second in the 1650 free. Burke Saka was fifth in the 200 back. Elijah Clyer, a diver, was placed seventh. And Anna Bradescu was fourth in the final diving competition. Both the men and the women finished ninth. Mr. Grant, you first. How would you rate the swim team's performance at ACCs this year?
I mean, I was kind of reminiscing on this on Wednesday, but off the dome, I cannot tell you the last time the Tech women won an event at ACCs, and then Ertan went out and did it twice. So that is phenomenal to see. Both it was the 500 and the 1650 that she won. I believe the 500 was a tie coming down the stretch. The 1650 time broke the 1,000 time, so the first 1,000 split was a school record, and the 1650 as well. I think they were both her records already. So
Yes.
yeah, that's pretty darn good, especially if only, I think in our notes here, it's Tech's third ever female ACC champion. So, not too shabby. Like I said, couldn't tell you off the top of my head the last time it happened, but that's pretty rarefied air for Tech's youngest varsity sport. Women's swimming was added in about 0203, I believe. But yeah, I think that leads the way. You had some fantastic finishes really all around, but I think it's really that depth that kind of led them to slot into ninth. And that, at least for the men, that's kind of about where we had them last week when we talked about it. The women, that's above it. So you're in a crowded neighborhood when you go to ACC. So not something you want to just write off. But I know, Jack, there's plenty of other folks to talk about. You got thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to mention the men were squarely in ninth in terms of points. They were about 40 points behind UNC and 150 points ahead of Duke. So they were squarely. The women, on the other hand, were just barely ahead of Miami by 6 points for ninth place, but about 50-ish behind Notre Dame. So a decent spread there. Women, most of their points came from relays. For the guys, it was mostly individuals. Yeah, it's not a UVA pod, but we did hype that up a little bit. The UVA women won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They won 15 different events and set NCAA records in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those events. And this isn't even at the NCAAs yet. So they're doing what we thought they were going to do, which was they have all the same people. They went faster, and they could still go even faster.
It's an absurd that I think it was the 400 IM relay team. The 400 medley relay team is an absurd. I've never seen a swim like that. Or I haven't seen a swim like that in a while.
Yeah,
Kate Douglas is an absolute monster.
Kate Douglas is insane. Her and Alex Walsh both won every event they got. So they both got 96 points apiece individually. The UVA women also set the points record for the ACC meet. They scored 1,536 points, which was 300 clear of NC State, who still did great. And NC State won the guys' meet by 600 points over Virginia Tech. That team will not be as good next year because that's a senior-heavy team, so we'll see how that goes next year. Although Super Senior could still exist, so yeah, we'll see.
1,600 points is like 7 straight years of Georgia Tech women's finish.
I know, yeah, no, it's
colossal.
The UVA women are it's just ridiculous how good they are. I mentioned this before the pod, but I just thought it'd be fun to mention here. There was a girl on one of the writers for Swim Swam did the theoretical. If Kate Douglas swam all 4 legs at her fastest of the 400 medley relay, and they would be faster than every team except for UVA's team, so like already approaching the NCAA and US Open record just by herself. So it's truly ridiculous how insanely good they are.
It's kind of stupid.
If you didn't watch this, watch the NCAA meet, because the women's NCAA meet will basically be a proto Olympic trials for next year, and in Indianapolis, when all those girls are going to be there trying to make the Olympic team, and fewer events that they can swim in NCAAs, but it'll be just as good of a meet, if not better, and hopefully they'll go faster.
Well, and they won 15 events. That's like more than Tech has ever won in all women.
We've won,
maybe
as
even
we
men
said,
combined.
Three individuals have won for the women ever in school history. They won 15 in a single meet, which is what they did last year too.
Yeah, I do want to say a couple other names that jumped out. Patur Unlu, he got second place in the 500. Yeah, 500 of note this time, and I believe, Ertan's time was also a B cut. So you're seeing top tier ACC times, not counting for automatic consideration. This is where we dovetail into a brief, hopefully not too wordy explanation of what the heck all that language means. Basically, in the NCAAs, A cuts are automatic qualifying for nationals. B cuts are consideration. If you get an A cut, all of your times qualify for anything you have a consideration cut in. The NCAA will take all those automatic qualifiers, and then they will make all the events the same number of swimmers. That will then unlock some B cut swimmers. And if you get invited, you can then swim any event in which you have consideration. Gents, I know that's like 30 seconds. Did that make any sense? And do I need to do any more elaboration?
I think that's
consideration
good.
is just the B cut, right?
Yep, that's the B cut. Relays, you need the A cut to swim relays. So I don't know that we would have any advancing there.
If you qualify, you're in. If you're on the border, just see where the gaps are.
Yep, exactly.
Mr. Grant, our ratings update, if you will.
Yeah, quick ratings update. Of note, the Big Ten men, the Pac-12, and the Big 12 are yet to swim. The Ivies, ACC, SEC, and the Big Ten women are already done. Yes, I included the Ivies. Yes, they are swimming's sixth power league. The men are sitting at 29th. The women are at 47th. That is up a decent amount from where they were a week ago or 2 weeks ago when we ran this. So that is good to see. But like we said, we do have a couple big names still in action with the Pac-12 and the Big Ten.
Next up for the entire nation, diving zone meets and then a last chance meet coming up for Tech. So interesting couple weeks ahead. We have NCAAs in just under a month, so we'll keep an eye on that. Any other notes on swimming competition before we move on to track and field?
Yeah, the last chance was TBA'd at event TBA. So, yeah.
One quick note on track and field. They will be in Louisville for ACC Indoor Championships starting Thursday, and through the weekend, we'll have something on them next weekend. So let's head over to golf. Today was the second day of the Water Sound Invitational. On first day of competition, Hiroshi Tai hit a 68, played his entire round under par, and was tied for sixth at the time, along with Tech's team being tied for first. After today's competition, that is no longer the case. They're tied. Well, they are at second, 8 strokes behind number 1, Vanderbilt. Mr. Grant, any other notes?
Yeah. Also in the mix are Tech set number 12. I don't know if we said that, but they're ahead of number 11 FSU by 4 strokes. In terms of the rest of the field, you've got Alabama. That's number 17. They're down in 4th. They're ahead of them by 7. Mississippi State is in 5th. They're number 24. You've got NC State, Notre Dame, number 36. Oklahoma State, number 16. Weirdly at +5. Oklahoma State's good golfing school. That's kind of odd. Clemson is at number 40 in the rankings. They're +7. Virginia Tech +23. Air Force +45. So a lot of good competition. Tech was up there with the best of them, but no longer are. But they're sitting in second, and it'll be interesting to see how they round things out. Well, by the time you guys are listening to this today.
And finally, baseball. We teased it at the beginning of the episode. We made you wait the entire episode to get here. Georgia Tech baseball started season this weekend. It swept the Miami Redhawks, but that sweep was not without its fair share of drama. I am emoting with my hands for dramatic effect on the Zoom call. Podcasting is a visual medium. Tech won 15-12, 5-4, and 6-8. Let's start with Friday, because that, I think, was not only the season opener, but probably the most notable of these games, just for what it almost turned into. Tech put up 13-run lead in the first 2 innings of this game.
Oh, right.
And we were all excited, being like, okay, this year is going to be different. It's going to be all offensive firepower. And then Miami starts putting together little runs. Dawson Brown gets a little shaky, and then Miami loads the bases one time, and then another time, and then they hit a grand slam. And then by the end of the game, it's 15-12. And you have some poor kid on the mound sweating out of what ends up being a save. Oh, that was a mess.
Rough. I knew they got up big, and I forgot why I stopped. I think I just had to be somewhere, so I stopped watching after it was out big. So I just didn't even think about the fact that, oh right, we were up 13-0.
Terry Busey looked good in that one inning. I don't think he sweated that out. That was 1 hit, 1 run.
Well, metaphorically.
1 hit, no runs.
His first ever save.
3 strikeouts like that.
It should not have been a save.
That that was the least concerning part of the pitching performance. It was the fact that most concerned me was that of those 15 runs, that came on 5 Miami errors. Those 9 runs, and then the 4 in the second, and then again it was 13-5 after 3. So yeah, you gave 5 right back. But no, I thought it was more. I guess, I mean, it's concerning that Dawson Brown, your presumptive starting Friday starter, gave up 5 runs in 2 2/3. But then Noah Samol giving up 6 in 1 2/3. Also concerning. That was a 6-run 6th and a 5-run 3rd for Miami to match Georgia Tech's, mostly match Georgia Tech's 9-run 1st and 4-run 2nd. But yeah, the bats were quiet down the stretch as well. They did all their damage in the first 3 innings. Did I say it was 13-5? It was 15-5. I can't count. But
surely no one would blow that large of a lead.
Yeah, of the 8 runs Tyler Chadwick, the Miami starter, allowed, only 2 of them were earned. 5 walks.
Yeah, lots of walks, lots of like that second baseman who started the first game was not having a great time. The wind, I think it's also important to know
it was windy.
The offensive firepower, especially on Friday, the wind was blowing straight out.
Well, that'll do.
I think right into right field. So anything that was hit the jet stream carried hard.
Which interestingly also meant that it was blowing in at softball. Sorry, random.
Yes,
but
that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, that's out in the shortest part of the park in Rush Chandler, and then in softball towards. I mean, it's all short in softball, so there's not really much there. But yeah,
ridiculous weather situation on Friday. Also, was disgusting. Friday.
That's also why I wasn't gonna go. I'm like, I'm not sitting outside for this. Like,
speaking of, remind me, I have something at the end that is completely unrelated to Georgia Tech baseball, but I don't want to forget it because it is related to Georgia Tech sports. Not to dwell and ruminate too hard on Friday's performance, but it is worth noting that Luke Schmolke 1.1, he walked 3 guys, but didn't allow any runs. So good job there. But Busey, certainly the shining spot out of the Friday pitchers. Aiden Finateri led up 1 run in 2 1/3. So nothing too crazy there, but just things to keep eyes on. In terms of performances, you had Christian Campbell come out of the game early Friday with injury. We'll see what we can find out there. And then also Sunday, in terms of on the theme of injuries, you also had Akshay. Was it going into second base?
Compton pulled some sort of leg muscle sliding into second. He limped off the field. We had an amateur medical assessment from a friend of ours that said if he had torn his hamstring, he would not have been able to straighten out his leg. But he was limping on the leg. He was able to move it. He was able to bend it.
This from the guy who didn't get into med school this year. I don't know if I trust that.
Getting into med school is difficult.
I trust you.
I also said it was amateur.
Hamstring.
I noted it was an amateur medical assessment.
We're off the rails here. Let's talk about baseball. My goodness.
I make no promises, but yeah. So I think Campbell's injury was more minor. I believe there was some comment about him being more day to day. And we'll get an update on him soon. Compton, obviously, with the way that looked, did not look like it was going to be minor at all. That is going to be a bit longer. We'll just have to see what the latest update is from Danny Hall and co. And we'll get one, assumedly. I mean, they play tomorrow, tomorrow when we're recording this, today when you hear this, in Statesboro. So we'll hear something or see something.
And that guy, Drew Compton, before we get too far away, he was 3 for 6 with 2 triples on Friday. That's pretty darn good. As we noted, he was legging out a double on Sunday. He was 1 for 4 with a double. You finished the weekend. I think that makes him, I'm going to do some math. That's like 5 or 4 for 13 with 3 extra base hits. That's not a bad showing at the plate. We saw a number of debuts as well, but one I guess not debut that I want to note is John Giesler. I don't think we talked about him very much last week. He went 3 for 4 on Sunday. He got the Sunday song. Is batting .556 through the season thus far. So yeah, good showing from John.
Couple other notes. On Sunday against the bottom of the barrel of Miami's pitching, we got a bunch of other freshman debuts. We saw Riley Stanford, Carson Sabathia, forgetting another freshman's name, Tyler Hare, like a bunch of guys that are young. Some of them may take a redshirt year once we get to conference play, excuse me. But a lot of guys that a lot of people are excited to see, especially Stanford and Sabathia. So it was good to see. It was good to see them get out there, but even the Sunday game turned into a little bit of a mess near the end, and so did the Saturday game. Anyway, all of these games were filled with drama in some way, shape, or form. Tech has Tennessee Tech coming up this weekend, so hopefully that is a much lower stress level than it was this weekend. Gentlemen, any other notes on baseball before we start wrapping up?
Yeah, I just want to round out some of the pitching talk. Ben King, 2 innings, scoreless on Saturday. Joe Manley cleaned things up by inducing a double play on Saturday as well. And then you had a good, I'd say good showing start. Jackson Finley on Sunday, 1 earned run in 5 innings pitched. So that kind of cleans up my thoughts.
Designated hitter-pitcher combo in college, Jackson Finley.
Works for me.
Good stuff from him. Rounding out some of our other news items. Hockey, do we have a playoff update? No clue. We'll find out later this week. Men's lacrosse absolutely sat on Bama away, 22-2. Women's lacrosse played its only home games of the year versus Tennessee and UAB. We don't have results for you. We'll work on that during the week. I think that about does it in terms of news items, unless one of y'all can think of another one.
They're putting solar panels on the rec garage. There's your campus construction update.
Speaking of campus construction, there is some sort of roof work going on at O'Keefe.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's not even AC related or just general roof repair related, unclear. But eventually we'll find out.
I don't think we talked about this either. New dorm going in next to Woody's, 862 beds, desperately needed. Tech has relied on the private market to construct a lot of the housing that's gone up lately. So we'll be good. Will be good to see some freshman beds. I'm sure there's a need there. There's no room left to build Tech housing anywhere else. So this is really one of their last.
Can only build up from here. So I don't think they're going to build too far up on the main campus. So this is going to be it.
Where all right, is it on the same Woody's footprint, or are they putting it in the parking lot where we always wanted a soccer stadium?
Parking lot between 8th Street and Northside, Woody's, and whatever that one is out there. I'm hoping that it opens up 8th Street all the way out to Northside. It kind of plugs into the West Midtown, I guess, side of things. But I mean, GDOT will never let them put a stoplight on that road. So who knows?
Stroads are a plague on this economy. I think we are running very over time, so we may not have time for our trivia this week, but we'll save that for next week. Mr. Grant, take us home.
Yeah, very sad not to do that trivia, but it'll be a good one next week. Keep an eye out for that. As always, you can find us at fromtherumbleseat.com. We post a lot of other content between the three of us and the rest of the staff that go up, not just with this podcast, but on really everything related to Georgia Tech sports. For those of you that want to find us, we really appreciate your feedback. In fact, at softball this weekend, I had some listeners come up and chat about the podcast. So great to see. In terms of other ways to contact us, we do appreciate the feedback and are always down to hear it from the rumbleseat@gmail.com. You can find us at FTRS blog at JakeGrant98 is me at Jack Nicholas for Jack. You can find Section 103 at Section 103 on Twitter and Section103.com. You can find us Facebook and Instagram at From the Rumble Seat and podcasts wherever fine podcasts are sold. Until next week, thank you for listening. Good night. Good luck. Go Jackets.